The warm glow of neon signs cast colorful patterns across the faces of patrons as I pushed through the door of the Velvet Lounge, my favorite gay bar in the city. It was Tuesday night, quiz night, and the energy was already electric despite it being barely 7 p.m. You could feel the anticipation in the air, that special mix of competitive spirit and camaraderie that made these evenings something I looked forward to all week. Let me explain why these quiz nights matter so much in our community. They're not just about testing knowledge or winning prizes. They're about creating spaces where people can come together, laugh, flirt, and feel a sense of belonging that many of us struggle to find elsewhere. In a world that can sometimes feel isolating, these regular gatherings become anchors in our social lives, reliable touch points where friendships are formed and sometimes, if you're lucky, something more. I weaved through the crowd, nodding to familiar faces and exchanging quick hugs with friends I'd made over months of attendance. The bar was filling up quickly, teams clustering around tables adorned with little numbered placards and bowls of complimentary popcorn. The quiz master, a drag queen named Veronica Vex, was setting up her microphone at the front, her towering purple wig adding at least a foot to her already impressive height. I was scanning the room for an empty table when I spotted him, Marcus. He was sitting alone at a table near the back, nursing what looked like a gin and tonic, his dark curly hair falling slightly over one eye as he scrolled through his phone. We'd met a few weeks ago at another quiz night. He was new to the area, having moved from Chicago for a job in graphic design. I'd been drawn to his quick wit and the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. We'd exchanged numbers that night but had only texted casually since then, mostly sending each other terrible puns and memes about gay culture. I wasn't sure if he'd want company, but something about the way he kept glancing up at the door gave me the courage to approach. "Is this seat taken? Or are you waiting for your regular quiz team of geniuses to arrive?" I asked, trying to sound casual despite the flutter in my stomach. His face lit up with recognition. "Alex. Hey. No, I'm flying solo tonight. My coworkers bailed at the last minute." He gestured to the empty chair across from him. "I was actually hoping you might show up. 2 brains are better than 1, right?" And just like that, we became a team. There was something about Marcus that put me at ease almost immediately. Maybe it was the way he listened intently when I spoke, or how he wasn't afraid to be silly in public. As we chatted before the quiz started, I learned more about him, how he'd grown up in a small town where he was the only out gay kid in his high school, how he'd found himself through art and design, and how moving to a new city was both terrifying and liberating for him. "What about you?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. "How did you end up becoming a quiz night regular?" I told him about my own journey, moving to the city 5 years ago for grad school and staying for a job in environmental science. How I'd stumbled into the Velvet Lounge one rainy Tuesday when my plans had fallen through, and how the weekly quiz had become my favorite tradition. "There's something about useless knowledge that I find comforting," I admitted. "Like knowing the capital of Burkina Faso might never help me in real life, but it might win me a free drink here." "Ouagadougou," Marcus said with a grin. "Show off," I laughed, feeling that flutter again. The atmosphere in the bar was building as more teams arrived. The Velvet Lounge on quiz night was a beautiful cross-section of the local LGBTQ+ community. College students huddled together sharing pitchers of beer, older lesbian couples with decades of trivia knowledge between them, groups of friends who came as much for the socializing as for the competition, and couples on dates looking for something more interactive than just dinner and drinks. Veronica Vex tapped the microphone, sending feedback squealing through the speakers. "Hello, hello, my beautiful brainiac babies," she called out, silencing the chatter. "Welcome to Tuesday night trivia at the Velvet Lounge, where the drinks are strong, the questions are hard, and hopefully that's not the only thing that's hard tonight." The crowd erupted in laughter and cheers. "Now, the rules are simple," she continued, adjusting her wig. 6 rounds, 10 questions each. Write your answers on the sheets provided. No phones, no shouting out answers, and absolutely no sleeping with the quiz master to get the questions ahead of time. I tried that once, and trust me, it's not worth the effort. More laughter rippled through the room. Marcus and I exchanged a look, both silently accepting the challenge. We needed a team name, something clever but not too try-hard. After a brief debate, we settled on Quizdiama Aguilera, Marcus's suggestion that made me laugh out loud. The first round was general knowledge, and we quickly fell into a rhythm. Marcus knew history and pop culture, while I contributed science facts and geography. We weren't just good together, we were surprisingly complementary. When I blanked on the year the Berlin Wall fell, Marcus whispered 1989 with such confidence that I didn't question it. When he hesitated over a question about the periodic table, I filled in the gap without missing a beat. Between rounds, we got to know each other better. I learned that Marcus collected vintage comic books and could make homemade pasta from scratch. He discovered my passion for kayaking and my embarrassing knowledge of 90s boy bands. With each shared fact, each laugh, each accidental brush of hands as we both reached for the answer sheet, I felt a connection growing between us that went beyond just quiz partners. The competition was fierce. At a table near us sat the Brainy Bottoms, a team of 4 friends who'd won 3 weeks in a row. They eyed us suspiciously when Veronica announced after the 3rd round that we were tied for first place. Across the room, let's be honest, we're smart, a team of women who'd been coming to quiz night since it started, were only 2 points behind us. As we headed into the 4th round, music trivia, Marcus leaned across the table. "We might actually have a shot at winning this," he said, his eyes bright with excitement. "Don't jinx it," I warned, but I couldn't help sharing his optimism. There was something magical happening between us, a synergy that made me feel like we could accomplish anything together. The music round was our strongest yet. Marcus nailed questions about 80s new wave bands that I'd never even heard of, while I recognized a classical piece that had been used in a famous film soundtrack. By the end of the round, we had pulled ahead of the Brainy Bottoms by 3 points. The 5th round, movies and television, kept us in the lead, though we missed a question about an obscure director from the French New Wave. As Veronica collected the answer sheets for the final scoring before the last round, the tension in the bar was palpable. People were ordering extra drinks to calm their nerves, teams were playfully trash-talking each other, and the playlist pumping through the speakers had switched to dramatic instrumental music that felt like the soundtrack to a reality show elimination. "You know what?" Marcus said suddenly, his voice dropping to a more intimate tone. "I'm having more fun tonight than I've had in months." "Me too," I admitted, surprised by my own honesty. There's something about the combination of trivia, alcohol, and good company that's hard to beat. He held my gaze for a moment longer than necessary, and I felt that flutter in my stomach intensify. There was definitely something happening between us, something that transcended our quiz partnership. Veronica returned to the microphone with a flourish. "All right, my lovely knowledge seekers. After 5 rounds, we have a very tight race at the top. In 3rd place with 42 points, let's be honest, we're smart." The team of women cheered and high-fived each other. In 2nd place with 45 points, last week's champions, the Brainy Bottoms. The 4 friends looked disappointed but nodded in acknowledgement. And in 1st place, with 47 points, the dynamic duo, the newcomers who were taking this quiz by storm, Quiztiama Aguilera. Marcus and I looked at each other in disbelief before breaking into grins. The bar erupted in applause. Everyone loves an underdog story, and for a moment, I felt like we were the stars of our own movie. But wait, Veronica called out, raising a hand dramatically. "We still have the final round, and it's worth double points. That means any team could still take home the grand prize of a $50 bar tab and eternal quiz night glory." The final round was always the most challenging, a mix of obscure facts, trick questions, and brain teasers that could make or break a team's standing. As Veronica distributed the last answer sheets, I could feel the pressure mounting. Marcus looked at me with a mischievous glint in his eye. "Want to make this more interesting?" he asked. "What did you have in mind?" I replied, intrigued. "If we win this thing, you have to let me take you out for a proper dinner, not just bar food and trivia." His confidence was charming, but there was also a vulnerability in his eyes that told me this mattered to him. I pretended to consider it seriously. "And if we lose?" He shrugged. "Then I still want to take you out, but you get to pick the place." I laughed. "That doesn't seem very high stakes. Where's the risk?" Marcus bit his lip, then leaned forward. "Okay, how about this? If we get the final question right, regardless of whether we win overall, you kiss me." The proposition hung in the air between us, electric and unexpected. My heart was suddenly pounding in my chest. Was this really happening? We'd only known each other for a few weeks, had only been quiz partners for one night, but there was no denying the chemistry between us. "And if we get it wrong?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Then I kiss you," he replied with a grin. "Either way, I think we both win." I couldn't argue with that logic. "Deal," I said, extending my hand to shake on it. Instead of shaking it, he brought my hand to his lips and kissed it gently, sending a shiver up my arm. "Sealed with a kiss. Hopefully the first of many," he said softly. Before I could respond, Veronica was announcing the start of the final round. 10 questions stood between us and whatever came next. We tackled the first 9 with a mixture of confidence and educated guessing. Some we knew immediately, others required debate and deliberation. By the time we reached the final question, we were feeling good about our chances, but the bet had added a layer of tension that had nothing to do with winning the quiz. Final question, everyone, Veronica announced. This is worth double points, so think carefully. In Greek mythology, this figure was punished by the gods to push a boulder up a hill for eternity, only to have it roll back down each time he neared the top. This myth has become a metaphor for a task that can never be completed. Name this figure. Marcus and I looked at each other. I could see him searching his memory, brow furrowed in concentration. I was doing the same, trying to recall my limited knowledge of Greek mythology. I think. Marcus began hesitantly. It might be Prometheus? No, wait. He was the one with the eagle eating his liver. It's not Icarus either, I mused. He flew too close to the sun. We were running out of time. Around us, other teams were scribbling their answers with varying degrees of confidence. The brainy bottoms looked particularly pleased with themselves. And then it hit me. Sisyphus. I whispered urgently. It's Sisyphus. Marcus's eyes widened. Are you sure? Almost certain, I nodded. I remember studying this in a philosophy class. Camus wrote an essay about it, The Myth of Sisyphus. It's about finding meaning in a meaningless task, or something like that. Marcus didn't hesitate. He wrote Sisyphus on our answer sheet in his neat handwriting. I trust you, he said simply, and those 3 words felt more significant than they should have. Veronica collected the sheets for the last time, and the bar returned to its normal playlist as she and the other judges tallied the scores. Marcus and I sat in anticipation, not just of the quiz results, but of what would happen afterward. The bet suddenly felt very real. Nervous? He asked, his eyes never leaving mine. About the quiz or about the bet? I countered. Both. Either. I considered the question honestly. Strangely, I'm more nervous about getting the answer wrong than about the kiss itself. His smile was warm. That's a good sign, I think. After what felt like an eternity, Veronica returned to the microphone. All right, my brilliant bar patrons. The final scores are in. But first, let's go through the answers to the last round. She proceeded to read out the correct answers to the first 9 questions. We'd gotten 7 right, which was respectable. The brainy bottoms had clearly done well too, judging by their confident nods. In the answer to the final question, Veronica paused dramatically about the Greek figure pushing the boulder up the hill for eternity. Is Sisyphus. Marcus and I locked eyes across the table, a silent celebration passing between us. We'd gotten it right. The bet was won. My heart was racing, but not from the triumph of the correct answer. Veronica continued, and now for the final standings. In 3rd place, with 58 points, let's be honest, were Smart. The team cheered again, clearly happy with their performance. In 2nd place, with 63 points, Cristiana Aguilera. We'd come in 2nd. For a moment, I felt a twinge of disappointment, but it was quickly replaced by the realization that the outcome of the quiz no longer seemed like the most important result of the evening. And your champions tonight, with 65 points, the brainy bottoms. Come claim your prize, you brilliant boys. The bar erupted in applause as the winning team made their way to the front to collect their gift card and take a bow. Marcus and I clapped along, but our attention was firmly on each other. So, he said when the noise had died down, we got the final question right. We did, I nodded, suddenly feeling a little shy despite the anticipation that had been building all evening. And I believe we had a bet. His voice was soft, meant only for me despite the noise of the bar around us. I took a deep breath. We did. The moment stretched between us, full of possibility. Around us, the quiz night was breaking up. Some teams were leaving, others were settling in for more drinks. The brainy bottoms were buying around for their friends with their newly won bar tab. But in our little corner, time seemed to stand still. I should probably collect on that bet, Marcus said, leaning slightly forward. Probably, I agreed, mirroring his movement. He reached across the table, his hand gently cupping my cheek. The touch was electric, sending a current through my body that made me acutely aware of every sensation, the background music, the distant laughter, the smell of his cologne, the warmth of his skin against mine. And then he was kissing me, his lips soft and questioning against mine. It was gentle at first, almost hesitant, as if he was giving me a chance to pull away. But I didn't want to pull away. Instead, I leaned into the kiss, my hand finding the back of his neck, fingers threading through his curls. The kiss deepened, becoming more confident, more certain. I could taste the gin from his earlier drink, could feel the slight stubble on his chin against my skin. The world around us faded away until there was nothing but this moment, this connection that had been building all evening. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless. Marcus looked equally affected, his eyes darker than before, a flush spreading across his cheeks. "Well," he said simply. "Yeah," I agreed, unable to form a more coherent response. A slow smile spread across his face. "I think we both won that bet." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. "I think you're right." Around us, the bar had noticed our moment. There were a few whoops and hollers. Someone shouted, "Get it, boys," and Veronica, passing our table, gave us an exaggerated wink. But the attention didn't feel embarrassing. It felt like a celebration, a community witnessing the start of something new. "So," Marcus said, taking my hand across the table, "about that dinner I mentioned earlier." "I'm free tomorrow night," I offered, surprising myself with my boldness. His smile widened. "Tomorrow's perfect." We stayed at the bar for another hour, talking and laughing, occasionally stealing kisses that became less tentative each time. We learned more about each other, our dreams, our fears, our favorite movies and books. The conversation flowed as easily as it had during the quiz, but now there was an added layer of intimacy, of possibility. As the night wound down and we finally decided to leave, Marcus walked me to my car. The night air was cool, a welcome relief after the warmth of the crowded bar. Stars were visible above the city lights, and somewhere in the distance, music was playing from another venue. "I had an amazing time tonight," Marcus said, pulling me close. "Me too," I replied, wrapping my arms around his waist. Who knew that quiz night could lead to this? "I'm glad I lost my regular team tonight," he admitted. "Best thing that could have happened." "I'm glad you were sitting alone at that table," I said, "and that you knew the capital of Burkina Faso." He laughed. "Ouagadougou," he repeated, the word somehow sounding romantic in the context of the moment. "Show off," I said again, but this time I silenced him with a kiss. When we finally said goodnight, with plans firmly in place for dinner the following evening, I drove home with a smile that wouldn't fade. The night had started as just another Tuesday quiz night at my favorite gay bar. It had ended as the beginning of something that felt important, meaningful, full of potential. As I fell asleep that night, I couldn't help but think about the final question, about Sisyphus and his eternal task. Philosophy had never been my strong suit, but I remembered enough to know that Camus had concluded that we must imagine Sisyphus happy, finding joy in the journey rather than the destination. Maybe that was the real lesson of the night, that sometimes the unexpected detours, the spontaneous bets, the connections we make when we least expect them, are what make life meaningful. And as I drifted off to sleep, I was already looking forward to next Tuesday's quiz night, not for the trivia or the prizes, but for the chance to sit across from Marcus again, to continue whatever we had started. Because sometimes you go to a bar quiz looking for answers, and instead, you find something you didn't even know you were questioning. Sometimes you bet a kiss on the final question, and you both win, regardless of the score. Total_char_count, 18,757.